attending. Tonight, Monday the 8th of October, it's the Australian Numismatic Society's 1193rd meeting. We have apologies of Robert Tonner, Les Carlisle, Murray Brad, Barry Towers, Joe Detling and Ross Pratley. Is there any other?
Yeah, also George Pulowski.
All right, we'll move straight into general business. We've, I think everybody knows that we've got the ANDA Fair happening at the end of the month at the Town Hall, Lower Town Hall, Saturday the 27th of October, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and then Sunday 28th of October, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Now we always ask for volunteers to help with the running of the ANDA Fair because we have our own display tables, and we always sort of act as a bit of a information counter, I suppose, because people come to us and say, where can I find such and such, and then you just point them in the opposite direction.
We also help the kids on the 5-cent table.
Oh yeah, are they going to have that again this year?
Yeah, and
right.
They also have something they call the 2-cent challenge. I don't know what that is, but you know, it might be an idea for you to get some 2 cents. Yeah, you know, pay the kids to come and bring some over to you.
Is Andrew Crellin still sort of in charge of the ANDA?
No.
Or?
No, he used to be the treasurer, but I don't think he's involved anymore. He's in Perth now, so it makes it difficult.
He was there last year.
Yeah, he's always there, but he doesn't run it anymore.
No.
No, well they have like an event manager.
Yeah.
But you know, like you know, if they need 2-cent coins, well they.
But Belinda Downey is the current president, I think, of ANDA. So you know, Belinda is quite pushy.
Quite pushy, yeah. Although,
you know, she always has the $1 million coins and what next. So she's even higher upper market than Jim Noble of the stuff that she sells.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm sure she'll have everything organised anyway. But yeah, look, just let Rod know if anyone can sort of help out. I'll be going on Sunday. I'll probably be there most of the day.
The roster I have so far is Saturday is myself, Frank and Grant Chauvier, Pat Walsh and Ian Sizeland, and on Sunday is myself, John, Pat Walsh and Peter Atherton. So if anybody else would like to come any of those days, let me know.
What's the time that's most
Ryan?
pressing?
Yeah, because I will let ANDA know your name and they'll make a name tag for you.
Well, put my name down in any case.
Right here. Either day, because we have the numbers for both days now, so you know, put your name down and turn up any day.
Now we also have the display frames on the tables that we're going to be at. So please, if you've got something you want to display, it's always interesting to sort of, the people that come to ANDA, they generally have a look at our displays and they ask questions. And then when they ask questions, then we can also sort of encourage them to become part of the
That's how we got
ANS.
Ian last year.
Yeah. So, now you know how we did it.
That's not going to help.
It works, you see, you're still here.
Yeah, so like we're going to have 4 display cabinets. So if we've got the 4 display cabinets, you know, if you're only going to be there for half the day, well then by all means bring a bit of a display, but then you've got to take it home again because you know, you won't be able to get it back if you don't come back the second day. So
I've asked them for 3 tables. The tables are about this size, and each table holds 2 display cases. So I've asked them for 3 tables and 6 display cases. We'll need 2 display cases for the ANS material that we're trying to sell.
yeah.
So we have 4 display cases for members to put their, you know, their
So
displays
the
in.
stuff would be behind glass, would it?
Well, the
Yeah.
display cases are under glass.
You know,
You know,
those,
they're the glass lid ones that you lift up, and we have the lock.
We've got a lock.
it's like
You
that,
know,
they
you
are
put it
lockable.
there and lock it.
Because I've got Rod, Jim Noble's auction first part of the year got some really fancy, big, shiny Australian kind of exhibition stuff.
Right.
And I mean, it's really is eye-catching. And it's the sort of stuff that perhaps could
Yeah, attract people. Yeah.
people to it, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, and the best thing, if it's going to work its magic, let it work its magic kind of all the time. And it's just a matter then of getting it there, installing it firstly, and then somehow or other looking after it until it's time to take it home.
Well, when you get there, you put it in the display case, which is aluminium side, it's about that thick,
Yeah.
and it's a glass top. So you lock it in, put the key in your pocket, and when you go home, you unlock it, take your stuff out, and off you go.
Unless someone
Yeah,
takes
you
it.
want to pay a lot of money for this stuff.
Well,
And,
you know,
No,
you can then man the table and keep an eye on it, because it's good that if you man the table with your display when people want to talk about it, that you can, you know, explain the displays to them. So,
What
Get
does
some more
happen
training.
overnight for Saturday, Sunday?
sorry.
What does happen overnight? Are they looked after
Security.
overnight on the Saturday
Uh,
night?
There is a guard there, but basically, I would say that if you're going to be there both days and you want to leave your display overnight,
You want to
that
come
you
back
lock
the
it
next
and take the key home with you. I mean, if somebody wants to steal it, then they'll steal the whole case. But there's probably better things to steal. But they do have security that
And the
stays
thing
there at
is,
night.
they can't conceal the whole case in their pocket like they could
A
a
little bit
coin or a
different,
medal.
yes.
Right, so
And
it's
quite
a bit-
frankly, there are lots of other things there that are
Yeah.
far more valuable than our stuff to steal. You know, why would you steal our stuff when you can go and get the really good stuff? Anyway,
Is
But
the
I-
Perth Mint there this year? Perth Mint coming?
Perth
Mint.
Mint.
I'm not sure. I don't know if Royal Australian Mint or Perth Mint is there. They've been there in the past, so I would assume they would be there. You know, they're the ones that are pretty commercial.
Have a pop-up.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they should have a pop-up there. But one of the things that I particularly would encourage is that if we have a variety of different collectibles in the display cases, it's always good to tell potential members, look, we just don't collect one thing. You know, we collect badges, we collect medals, we collect coins, we collect tinnies, and all that sort of stuff. You know, you know, you can tell them that we collect all sorts of different things, because some people say, oh, look, you know, my collection's not worth me joining the society. And I think, well, no, you know, like we're all in the same situation where we all collect different things, so why not join? So, you know, so whatever you've got, bring it along. You know, so you
So,
don't
Lindy,
have-
can
you
we
don't have
put
to-
you down?
Oh, to help, definitely, but I haven't got anything much to show at the moment.
Okay.
I don't even know
I'll
where
put your
it
name
is.
down so they make a tag for you and just turn up whenever you want.
All right. Anyway, I hope to see a lot of you there, because it's always good fun. And that's
Tony's
what-
given his apologies. He can't make it, but
And as Rod said, you know, there's always something to do. I think last year, Frank got onto the 5 cent table, didn't he?
Frank was helping
I
the
was
kids.
king of the 5 cents, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And Grant, were you on the
I didn't
door?
find in 72, so.
Yeah.
The door giving the what's it?
Information.
The auction
Yeah.
auction registration.
Yeah.
What ANDA does now is they put out special PNCs for that, and they have the special coin and stamp covers made, slightly different from the original ones, and they number them. And there's usually about 3 different coin covers, and the numbers 1 to 10 of each of them
Yeah.
they put up for auction.
Oh, I don't know.
And anybody who wants to bid on those 1 to 10 has to get an auction number. They're given which one of us is there on the Saturday will, you know, probably help out in explaining it to them, that write down your name and address and what next, and we'll give you a number, and then you go to the form and make your bid. So the first person there will make a bid, which it has to be more than the initial price. But it isn't until the close on Sunday that the last bid is the
Yes.
winner, sort of thing. So if you really want it, you're best to wait till till late Sunday to see what it is and put a bid.
3:30
But
Sunday.
if you queue up with everyone else, you can get numbers 11 to 2,000 or whatever it is. So, yeah. I've stopped collecting PNCs. I'm going to show you guys the last PNC I've got.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
why is
You
that?
can go on forever.
Well, why do you stop collecting pages?
Isn't that illegal for you to stop collecting?
No, you just
Well, no,
change-
put it this
change
way, I
things.
shouldn't say I've stopped collecting PNCs. I've stopped my standing order with Australia Post for PNCs.
Because they're bringing out so many of them.
Yeah.
aren't they?
From now on, I will buy them as I feel fit, mainly from stamp clubs which sell them at half price.
Finally learnt that, have you?
Well, the thing is, the ones you see at stamp clubs are all the old ones anyway, that, Australia Post was flogging at $5, so,
Yeah,
they kill their own market.
yeah. That's right. All right, that's the end of fair, 27th and 28th of October. Okay, the next meeting that we're going to have is going to be on Monday the 12th of November, and this time we're going to be down at Noble Numismatics, and we're going to start it at 7:30 as opposed to 8 o'clock.
Yeah, Nobles
Because
is always
We
7:30.
always have to do that so that we can have our meeting, finish it, and it's because Jim wants to go home.
Or
He
Colin
doesn't
wants to go. Colin wants to go out for dinner.
Yeah, and Colin wants to go to dinner.
What time's he going to dinner?
9:30.
If you do show up at Noble Numismatics and there's no one in the foyer, ring the bell, because we'll probably, if we have to sit out the back, we will be sitting out the back. We're definitely going to be there at Noble's in November, so please, if you show up and there's no one sitting in the foyer, don't think you've got it wrong, just ring the bell.
You know, I got called that one night. And I
Yeah, you went all the way in and all the way home.
Yeah, and I thought by the council or something. So.
Just, yeah.
George
Just
Pulaski did the
remember.
same thing, but he
Yeah.
didn't get in until about 8:30 or so, and we'd finished looking at all the items by then. It was coming time for tea.
Just remember that the bell's at the front door, and somebody will come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I learned from
Like
my
if there's no one there, there's no lights on. So
It looked a bit dark to me, that's all.
yeah, if there's lights on,
Try anyway.
Okay.
Oh, well.
All right. Is there any other general business?
I'd like to just talk about
Ah, yes.
these things.
Right.
Okay.
Rod's been cleaning up.
Yes, I've been the caretaker of this lovely piece of A&S memorabilia. It was, can't think of the name of the Queensland member who carved it, but he's a wood carver. And in the bicentenary in 1988, the A&S turned 75. And we started our first conference between Sydney and Brisbane in 1988. And they all went up to Port Macquarie, which is where the first conference was, and it was presented to the A&S. He also did one for Queensland, that they have it, but this was very nice. It's A&S 75th anniversary, 1913 to 1988, so it's with the A&S logo in the middle. And on the other side, it's for the bicentenary, A&S 1988 Convention, Port Macquarie, bicentenary 1788 to 1988, 200 years. So that's very nice. So it has lived in the cell attic for the last 15, 20 years or so, gathering dust. I managed to clean a bit off today, but since my wife passed, I no longer have to watch my television on my little TV up in my attic room. I can now watch the television with the dog in the lounge room on the big TV, and so my Foxtel is being dismantled, and Foxtel come tomorrow to fix it all up. But while I was cleaning all that stuff up, I saw this, which I had at the back of the room, and said, it shouldn't reside here anymore. We have a cupboard. It should reside here,
Good idea.
where everyone can enjoy it. The second bit. As you all know, we record all these meetings. I have been recording these meetings since about 1999, year 2000, somewhere around there. And when I first started, the first video camera I had was the video camera that I bought for my daughter and son-in-law for their wedding so that we could record the wedding. Now, we recorded the wedding. They never used the camera after that, so I said, I'd like to record the ANS. But in those days, we didn't have DVDs. We had video cassette recorders. And the camera was probably twice the size of that, and the little cassette recorder would fit in, and it would record about half an hour or so. I've got them all there, so to play it, you take it out, you put it in the normal one, you load it in your VCR, and it plays. So I've got them all here in this box. So there's probably about 30 or 40 of them in this box. If anybody has a VCR and would like to view any of these, feel free to borrow them. I'll leave the master one in there so that you can take it and watch it as well. What I will do next month, no, not next month, in December, because next month we're at Jim's, is also bring in a little carry case I have, which has the next 12, 13, 15 years worth of DVDs that I make every month, and I burn onto a DVD and put it in. All the conferences, all that sort of stuff is there. My son-in-law has suggested, they said, why don't you just put it in YouTube? He said, you can get an ANS sort of YouTube thing. You can record the whole thing on there, download it to YouTube, and anyone who doesn't make the meeting, if they want to watch the meeting, they can go to YouTube and watch it, and they can fast forward whatever they want. And you know, if you don't make it to the meeting and you have internet access, you can still watch the meetings. So, okay, sounds good.
But are you going to put that through the ANS website?
Yeah, I'll still. We'll
want
still
security.
get Peter to take photos and whatnot, because photos are much better in a way than the DVD. But it'll still go onto the ANS reports page, so I'll still make the page with the photos, and then we'll have the YouTube link at the very bottom. The page is still password. I mean, it's still the same password, but it's still password protected, so it's, you know, only ourselves who can get there. But I think other people can get there too, so we have to worry about that sort of security side. But anyway, that's the plan. We'll see how it goes, see how we modify it. But it does mean that, you know, if you can't make the conference, you can still see the conference, or whichever sections of the conference you want.
Yeah, well, that's true. But you know, it's still not as good as being there.
No, being there is more fun because
But we do need to go to the conference.
it's like being at a meeting. There's all the banter at the meetings that it's fun.
Yeah.
And when you can see things up close or what next, it's much better. But it's better than nothing. And you know, there's a lot of our members who can't make the meetings. People like David Southgate, for example, and quite a few overseas members. I get emails from Ron and Rhonda Bolden, David Southgate, you know, Paul Holland and what next, who said, I love the monthly reports with the pictures and what next. I almost feel as if I'm there after looking at all our reports. And I will get the reports up to date too. Peter sent me all the photos. I just have to get my acting together, and
Yep.
the last two meetings haven't been put on yet,
Yep.
but we'll get them there. So
Okay.
here it is. I'll put all this stuff away in the cupboard.
That's what's available. Yes.
John, as you and Rod know, people have lost their partners this month, and what I'd like to propose, I know this is not a usual thing, we always stand and have a minute's silence for our departed members, but I would request support for a motion to stand and have a minute's silence for people, our partners, both alive and past, who have supported us to be here and have been our life support, and I feel that it'd be a nice gesture tonight to be able to do that for the wives of both John and Rod, who've
I'm happy to.
So if you could join us, Rod, John, if you could count us down for a minute. Is anyone happy with that?
My dad used to come to the meetings too, so.
What are we doing?
Well,
Minute
bring
silence,
us
minute
our
silence.
support spouses and
Yes. Also, George Pulowski's wife sent me an email today, and she has to use only one hand, so it came through. So, but she's doing well. She's learning to walk, and with one hand, so that's good.
Okay, thank you. All right, if there's no other general business, the topic of the night is World War One remembered in numismatics. And well, as you know, in numismatics it's not just coins, it's medals and military medals and badges and everything else. So as it's coming up for the 100th anniversary of the armistice, we felt that we could have World War One related numismatics tonight, mainly because it's only a month early, but it's because November is going to be Jim Noble's place, and Jim Noble's place is about his auction, not about World War One. So we'll have a look at anything World War One related. And did anyone bring them along? We'll start out with Frank.
I'm not quite sure this actually fits the bill, but it is certainly World War One in that I had two uncles that served. One was killed, he was only 21 years of age at the time when he was killed. He served in France, and when he's unmarked grave at was years. The second uncle that was quite greedy, he went to the first and discharged from there, and then he saw it was such a good idea he joined up again for the second. The first one was Herbert James Purdy, who was a farmer from Ballina, New South Wales, prior to enlistment in the 6th Reinforcements of the 25th Battalion, embarked from Sydney on the 21st of October 1915 aboard HMAT Sebang B, I presume that's the name of the ship, for Egypt. In late February 16 he was transferred to the 9th Battalion, which initially relocated to Choiseul, France on the Western Front a month later. Private Herbert Purdy was killed in action near Poziers on the 26th of August 1916. And I say he was only 21 at the time. He has no known grave and is commemorated on the Villiers-Bretonneux Memorial, France. When Private Athol Roy Purdy embarked on the second reinforcements queue from Sydney on the 8th of May 1918 aboard RMS Austerley for Liverpool, England. On arrival he was transferred to the 42nd Battalion and 2 weeks later transferred to the artillery details and remustered as gunner. He joined the 12th Field Military Artillery Brigade in France on the 12th of October 18. After the end of the war he was remustered as a driver and remained in France for a further 6 months before returning to England and reverting to a gunner. Gunner Purdy was granted 3 months leave in England to study cabinet making before returning to Australia for discharge on the 10th of December 1919. And I say then he went back in for the second as a warrant officer and served again. That's his enlistment and what have you there. And then sort of, I suppose it's only because it's of the period, there's a 1914 English penny. It's only because it's of the period. And this one, I hope someone might be able to identify for me what it actually is. It's 1917. It's a 5 millimes. I'm not sure whether it's which country it's from. Someone might be able to tell me what it is.
Egypt, yeah, millim, yes. It's 50 actually.
So just again for the
5 millims, yeah.
So it's only because of the period rather than any actual connection with First World War.
1917.
That's what I do.
Thanks, Frank. Great.
Yes. Well, apart from the other one that I claim has been mine is the French Croix de Guerre, which was given to all servicemen and the civilians that served during the war, the French involvement.
Well, seeing Armistice Day is coming up, and this is another collection I'm working on eventually to have all mounted up properly. The victory medals of World War I from all the various countries. This one here, that's the Japanese one, and out of all the countries and all the various religion and political backgrounds after the war, it was the only one that didn't have Lady Victory, because the Japanese don't believe in female gods. So they have it's a rice farmer, if I remember the story of it. Yeah. Everyone else has the Lady Victory. Then on the back of them, they all have various national tokens. Get hold of that. Let's see the back of them. There you go. So you got the Croatians and the Serbs and the Italians and so forth, and the Americans.
So these are all been the Allied version.
Yeah, well, the French started it off. They have actually got 3 different types. Belgium had one, the Brazilians, the Cubans, the Czechoslovakians, Great Britain, which covered Australia, India, New Zealand, Fiji, Canada. South Africa had its own.
Oh, okay.
The Italians had one, the Japanese had one. Poles officially didn't have one until about, I think I read 1920, when 3 of the generals decided that their troops deserved something. So 3 different generals, but it wasn't the government that approved one. Then there's the Portuguese, the Romanian, Siam or Thailand, so, as I said, South Africa, and the Americans. And some information here. What was it? Italy awarded 2 million of their personnel with medals. Same with the French. One of the smallest one was Siam. There was 1,500. China, where's China? I know they got one. I think the Emperor got one.
Oh, the Emperor.
And no one else.
Oh,
So it doesn't. I don't know where it disappeared to. Obviously, during the communist.
What about the Russians?
No, they didn't have one.
Oh, yeah, because they had under
They
communist
have
rule.
other
weren't
things going on.
Yeah.
But China would have had the Emperor back in 1918. They had the Emperor been gone by then.
No.
Emperor left in 1913,
Yeah.
so
13.
the Republic came in 13.
Yeah, I think he was in exile in Japan.
Pu
And
Yu,
there was,
yeah, it was a Republic
yeah.
until the Japanese tried to put him on as the Emperor in Manchukuo, which was Manchuria.
Yeah. And this one is a French remembrance of War One. I think it was 20. I think the date might be on there. Might be able to see it. It's quite worn. It's the original ribbon. We turn it over. Yeah, it's quite worn. There might be a date on there.
Republic, right.
There you go.
1918,
1918.
1418,
19.
Grande Guerre, Great War. Yeah.
That was a remembrance. And then, of course, we've got everyone's favourite, the Germans. A second class Iron Cross, or Knight's Cross, as it may have been known then, and the Sev medal with cross swords.
Thank you, Grant.
That's great.
I think with the Poles, while they were a bit slow off the market, because most of the Poles were fighting with Britain. You see, they had their own sort of regiments and they had their own squadrons as RAF, so they probably got access to all of what Britain said.
They may have,
because
yeah.
they were fighting the...
Well, there was also a large German population in Poland. Was it the red or the white Germans? They various border changes and all that sort of stuff, and religious
Obviously
things.
Maurice, have you got anything to show? Lindy? Matthew?
Yeah, I've got a few.
Okay.
The more recent ones. They're not they're associated with the war.
That's all right.
Okay. The first one is, the first two are war memorials. They come out this year. Yes. And this one here is the armistice, the 100th anniversary. And this is the proof that the Australian people put out, Australian government put out for it. Against the armistice point there. That's my first proof that I bought in about 20 or 30 years. So.
Can you get photographs?
Shite and brine.
Just,
Yeah, I never usually did it, but this one's all, first time ever.
proof.
1990 was the last one for the proof. They're all bright and shiny, aren't they?
Did you buy it because of the armistice?
Yeah, that's why I bought them. I've been getting
Dollar?
World War One stuff lately, yeah. Because my grandfather served there, and I lost my mum lost an uncle in there too. And he was only 23. He lost in France, and he was fighting in the South African Army over there. So they got their version called the Other Woods. So it's right on top of that.
The War Memorial in Canberra?
Yeah, one's I think the Royal Australian Mint, and the other was the Persimmon. So they both put out one. So I think it was opened in 1931, the War Memorial in Canberra for the First World War. And it does honour other wars since then. And I think it also probably does honour wars before that, like the Boer War and also the Sudan and the other wars that they were involved in. Like I think some in New Zealand as well.
Boxer Revolution.
Yeah, I think they do, yeah.
Yeah. The Maori Wars.
Maori War, that's it. Yeah, that's
One and two.
Very good. Thank you. Pat, have you got anything to show?
Yeah, I've got something there.
If you have recent acquisitions, show them at the same time. Gordon.
The First World War began on July the 28th, 1914, and with many believing it would be over by Christmas, Australians rushed to join the fray. As it turned out, war would stretch for more than 4 years before the guns fell silent on November the 11th, 1918.
The 11th of the 11th at 11 a.m.
That's the declaration of war. When war was declared, 1914.
Well, Australia has been issuing a lot of that sort of thing lately with the stamp on medals and that, for the war.
Just talk about the Boer War. This is a VC, the first VC issued at the Boer War, but the Captain Neville House, he also signed up for the First World War as well. So
For the Boer War.
that's for the Boer War, and he was the first Victoria Cross in the Boer War.
But I think Jim sold that at Noble's auction, one of Noble's auctions, I think, if I remember correctly.
Not that long ago, yeah.
The Boer War, yeah.
Yeah.
The house,
Never seen it.
the house VC, yeah.
This one is the VC winner of the first VC in the First World War, Captain Neville House. Albert Jacker, sorry.
Jacket,
Albert Jacker was the
first Australian.
first VC winner in the First World War.
Is that AIF, was it?
Yeah.
That was from the Melbourne ANS, put that one out. I'll just go through these.
Oh, that's nice, yeah.
I might get to the Remembrance Day. This one is Simpson and his donkey in regard to the First World War. There's the Sands of Gallipoli, a book on Simpson and his donkey telling the story. A badge, 1915, Simpson and his donkey, and also one from Macquarie Mint
Oh,
of the same vintage.
okay.
Should be Simpson and his donkeys,
Donkey.
because he had three of them.
He had three donkeys.
Yeah, yeah, three donkeys.
Kingston too, didn't
You're not getting killed, are you?
he? Yeah.
One was called Paddy, one was called Abdul, but I can't remember what the third one was called.
He's a Kiwi, yeah. He was a New Zealand donkey.
This is, they will remember them. The First World War, the trumpeter. I only got the first one out there. All these others were in the set, but I didn't go ahead and and get the full set of it.
Oh, wow.
That was from the,
Macquarie,
yeah, Macquarie
Put out
Mint.
all sorts of stuff in it, there's a storage for that.
Got a couple of these. It's that one. This one is also Remembrance Day, 11th hour of the 11th month, 1911. And one for the nurses. We've got to remember the nurses as well.
So that's got that one. That's about a few years ago, didn't it, that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 years.
Well, that's long, 30 something.
The 100th anniversary of the end of the World War One is the
Like the middle.
yeah, the 100th anniversary of the end of the World War One. 1 ounce silver proof. I'll just look that there.
You don't have the silver ones. Yeah. You still to get
What?
them.
No,
eh?
I didn't get any of those. I only got the first one.
Ah.
And I've got a couple of the others in something else. Now, this is, lest we forget, the 11th of the 11th, 11. They shall grow not old as we the left grow old. They shall not weary them, nor be years condemned. At the going down of the sun and in the morning we will remember them. So it goes on the 11th hour of the 11th day, the 11th month. And there's a couple of coins in regard to that, the end of
Do
the
you
war.
want these on the chair, please?
No, I don't.
You finished with these? Okay.
This
Oh, did it? So I thought someone had to bring them in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're the legends of Anzac. They started with the First World War and they go on there. The Victoria Cross, the George Cross, the Military Cross, nursing services, the lot.
Oh,
Just a,
yeah,
20
yeah.
they're official 25 cent, some of them, there's 4 official 25 cent coins. And
We never had 2 and 6s, did we?
no,
I know our association said, I hope they don't bring another one out because I hated them with passion.
yeah.
I believe they are actually going to bring one out for the armistice.
Oh, no.
Next
Oh,
month.
didn't say they won't be Chris.
Well, they'd be silly if they didn't.
Yeah. I did read something that they were going to bring out.
And this one is the Anzac to Afghanistan. The same things, or very similar, in the fights over in France.
Was that last year or
Eh?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
the
that's
last.
last year?
Is that last year?
No, this is
Yeah,
last,
That's
this
last
is
year. That's
2017.
about 16.
Yeah.
2016.
Geez.
Yeah.
There was a 15 one
2016.
as well, wasn't there?
There's a
That
15.
gives you all some of the Darwin bombing from Elves, Bomber Command, the Burma Railway Kokoda, Bangtan, Korean War, Peacekeeping, Special Forces, Dogs at War,
No,
Afghanistan and Peace.
don't worry.
That's the other one. I'll just leave that rubbish there and I'll pick
There's
it up.
another one. After, there's another set. There's another one before that.
You can hide from the camera.
There's
Is that
another
it?
set
Yeah, that's it.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah.
You want some more?
So what happened? What happened to the first set of the 2015?
No, those are the only two that come up that I knew of.
He sold one at an auction last Saturday in Brookvale, didn't he? What?
Yeah. Which one was that the first
The
set?
first one.
We're up
Dollars
to
worth of fortune.
Ian.
Pardon?
The one that's got a special dollar's worth of fortune.
Someone got a real cheap last Saturday.
$25 or no, went for a bit more.
Oh, I think it was...
26, 27.
Yeah, it wasn't, yeah.
Yeah, I told Jill to put $25
You
on it.
told me to buy it, didn't you? Said I've got it.
Well, it was from Lifeline.
Yeah.
And the money's going
Yeah.
to Lifeline, so.
So, sorry, excuse my voice. A PNC of RSL, 1916 through to 2016.
Oh, yes. Oh. Come back.
Oh, you might have had
Haven't paid the bill.
No, no.
the rest of the pals.
No, no, it's not that.
We got power.
It's come back in a minute. It's still being recorded, okay? So
That long ago.
Oh, it's making a noise, so it must be.
There's a fan going.
So it must be working.
So in 2015, News Corp and the Mint came out with a series of 14 coins, 20 cent pieces. I've been lucky enough to find all of them in circulation, so I've got quite a few of them. They weren't supposed to be released, but I live on Colroy Plateau, near the war vets, and I think somebody has been out there giving them out to them, and they've gone to our local bank, and they've just been released. So I've got quite a few of these, but I'll put them all there.
oh yeah, here it comes.
There we go.
I think that's all right.
Oh, I can see it now,
What about this ACDC? Is anybody sort of...
Oh, yes, I did see that.
Well, it's $300,
Unbelievable,
isn't
isn't it?
You picked up any?
it? Well, it's $300, something like it.
For the triangular one.
For the triangular.
50 cents as well.
I'll get you to shine that on these individually if you don't mind.
So you've got them all in change, have you?
Yeah,
I mean, I've got them on the card,
yeah, I know these
but
are
I didn't get them for 20 cents.
I did.
And you are surprised?
Do I look surprised?
I even found this one, which is a metal.
He was the headbanging type.
So the cheapest is $150, is
No,
it?
no, that's for the
Triangle.
silver one.
Yeah.
There's a cheaper one for a much lower price.
Because somebody asked me,
We,
everybody
that
might
was
have
just,
it.
Oh, that'll do me.
we'll talk about Ian's collection here.
Yep.
Have you done these, Pete?
Everybody noticed the 20 cent coins that Ian put out?
Do you want to show them, Rod?
That was
Up
the
on
first set of
camera.
Right, just put them up on
This one
the...
at a time.
telegraph put out.
Oh,
They weren't supposed to come out in circulation, but somehow they did.
So these were the ones that were in the packs for, you know, that we're seeing up here.
Take it
Also
out of
issued
the
a
pack.
special
So
prize.
somebody's taken them out of
Taken out of a pack.
the pack and used them. But since they cost $3 in the pack, and they've been used as 20 cents,
They got ripped off.
yeah, well, some grandfather got ripped off, I'd say.
Well, this one's a metal. Well, I don't know which where that came out, but it's the... Oh, you might be able
There's
to
also
shine it
special
on that
prize
one.
come out too for that series. That's worth it.
so are they all dated, what, 2015?
2015, yeah.
So it's the first series that came out. They're all the News Corp ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the 25 cent was in the next two series come out.
Yeah.
25 cents.
Yeah, the first series came out with a special $1 coin,
Yeah.
That was
but
the one.
they really messed it up in the beginning because they issued the card and you got the 20 cent coins, and then towards the end then they said, oh, now we've got another card that you can put your dollar coin in. But the dollar coin was supposed to only be for subscribers to the newspaper. So everybody was sort of subscribing getting the coin and then unsubscribing because they wanted that dollar coin. That $1 coin on its own was
Worth a lot of money.
$220
Yes.
because you just could not get them.
I
But
must have one.
the card, there's two types of cards, right? The original card that didn't have the facility for the dollar coin, and then the second card came out that had the facility to put the dollar coin in.
Oh, I think I've got it from
And they were the expensive ones.
So there's the
Yes.
Australian
Oh,
$2 with the
Red poppy.
Yes.
and the other one is the Canadian red poppy.
Canadian quarter.
Quarter, yeah. I've got quite a few coloured ones. But,
What happened about the thing at the end when they were accusing us of pinching their
Technology.
colour printing?
It's in front of the courts. Yeah, it's you know, it'll be years in the courts.
Ah,
Who
we're
claims
still
we
making
pinched
coloured
it?
ones, aren't we?
Canada.
Yeah, the Canadians said Australia copied theirs, but the Royal Australian Mint said no, we didn't use it. We're not. The Canadian ones have a tiny little, like a little dot behind that they fill in, and the Australian Mint said no, we didn't need the dot. We don't have to put the little sandblasting bit in. We just use the normal bake-on
But
colour.
having said that, you can actually scratch the Australian one off because it doesn't have the pitting.
Yeah.
the
You
green,
can scratch the red poppy off if you want.
the red and the orange, they're Flanders Fields
Yeah.
Remembrance.
What about the purple?
That's the Queen.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, it's not. The purple one is the one that's worth money now.
I've got that one.
The 25th.
Is it the clever one?
Yeah, the purple one. The purple one's sort of $25, $30 worth for that purple one now.
$2 coin.
Yeah. That's the one the ANS had encased.
That's right, yeah.
And
I wondered.
So the coin is worth. Actually, I lie. It wasn't 25. It's about $50 now. Yeah.
that's Canada again.
Do they come from the War Memorial, those later
No,
ones?
just all commemorative coins from Canada. The Canada ones.
Canada.
The other ones I've just got from circulation.
Well, these ones keep it getting circulation, because
Yeah.
they've probably had quite a few coloured ones.
Yeah, they did.
Well, the green one there was the Commonwealth Games, wasn't
Awesome magic.
No, that's
it? Remembrance. Yeah.
Remembrance that one.
All these.
Yeah. Flanders Fields.
A couple of yellow ones.
There is one new one out. Somewhere.
Invictus one.
No, the Ah,
They put a lot of stuff out there.
I won't open it out of the bag. The Mint brought out
Oh, that's the pop
Oh, yeah.
quite a few where you can buy a
The bag, yeah.
at cost.
Right.
Yeah, they sell you 3
Three
bags,
bags for 10.
$10. Yeah, you could buy the bags at the pop-up shops,
Yeah.
or if you bought them from the Mint, you'd pay the $10 postage.
I've never seen them from the Mint. I was surprised when they came up and said they're not
They,
selling them
they won't do it
anymore.
anymore.
Yeah,
They've
but
actually stopped it
That's
now.
it. So the only way you can get them now is from the pop-up shops. So
Yes.
I'm wondering, why can you only get it from the pop-up shops? I mean, they said it's something to do with the
The ATO.
taxation department. But then,
Yes, I can't say how.
what's the difference between the pop-up shop and the Mint shop, or online? It don't seem to make sense. But
The Woolies.
Oh, Woolies put out a few too.
Yeah.
They got loads more, I think.
All right. Is that everything?
That's it, thank you. Yeah.
Yes, Marius.
Just a piece of history knowledge. Many years ago, I heard a call on Talkback Radio, and this gentleman said, I had enough to do with the end of World War One. And then he said, I was a bugler attached to head office somewhere in the Black Forest, and I was told to go outside and play the last post. And he said, being a young boy, you do as you're told, and you get orders like that. You don't know why you are told, but you just do it. And he went outside a few metres from the front door and played the last post. What he didn't realise at the time was the day that he was told to do it. It was at 11 o'clock on the 11th of November 1918, and he actually played the last post at head office in the Black Forest on the British side to signify the end of the First World War.
Interesting.
Very good.
He didn't know he was so significant.
He didn't realise what he was actually doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, whether or not the story is true, or that was his interpretation of what he did, who will never know.
It's a nice story.
Yes.
Rudy, have you got anything to show?
I haven't got anything to show,
Oh, sorry.
but I had something clearly in mind, but it's been an amazing week for me, and I haven't been able to bring it all down from brain.
That's all right.
But I could foreshadow it. Rod's comment to me the other day was, well, why not just stand up and speak about it? You remember telling me that?
I can't remember, sorry.
Yes,
It
you
was
can
a hard day.
say yes.
All right.
In a nutshell, the conclusion of the war, particularly between France and Germany, meant the restoration of Alsace and Lorraine back to France after it had been taken off them back in 1870 by the Germans in the Franco-Prussian War. And that was, in other words, 70 years, or approximately 70 years, this French territory had been under control of the German state. And as a consequence, the French somehow or other had to make a massive effort to re-embrace and reintegrate Alsace and Lorraine back into France, as it were. And then so this produced, in fact, a remarkable flurry of first-class medals for distribution and elite levels and all sorts of things, as well as an enormous effort to re-Frenchify, if you like, Alsace and Lorraine. With the darkening clouds in the 1930s all sort of following on from that, there was a real question about whether Germany would once again come in and take Alsace and Lorraine. Now, the headquarters of that is the headquarters, or the main capital of Alsace is, of course, Strasbourg. Right?
Oh, Strasbourg.
Strasbourg, and Strasbourg is the dominant city in the whole Rhine. The Rhine moves up north into Holland and moves down into eventually getting into Switzerland. But there is a great plain where Alsace and Lorraine, and the river runs through the plain, and Strasbourg is in the middle. Strasbourg is a bit like Paris in that the Rhine has got like a central island in it, and Strasbourg set up a bit like that. Now, an enormous effort was made with medals to influence, as it were, the population. And so in the space of about 20-25 years, more medals have come out in connection with that, starting off from the conclusion of the First World War, and there were medals, particularly the victory, as it were, and the liberation, again, of Strasbourg and Alsace-Lorraine. So that's an extraordinary set of medals that highlights the role of the medal.
Here's another one, Pete.
To be further noticed, the significance of
Two medals
Strasbourg.
on either side.
Strasbourg is, it's now where the European Union, the Parliament, actually sits in Strasbourg. And that's of obvious symbolic significance. Brussels is where the bureaucracy is, where they pull the levers and press the buttons and everything like that. But the Parliament itself sits in Strasbourg as probably a symbolic thing, because the EU in many ways is a new type of alliance between the French and the Germans. So I'd intended to show those. but it's a story worth sort of putting together in its own right, and that I perhaps if there's an opportunity next year, I'll just bring them all along, because the medals themselves intrinsically are truly wonderful. They didn't muck around, and they get absolutely the great medalists of the day to make these pieces, and they're all premier 68mm, 75mm, big medallions to really. So that had been my intention. I possess the medals, I know the story, but I just didn't have the time, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Rudy. David? It's always a big problem.
Yes, just listening to Rudy there reminds me, before I start on what I bought here, of a little experience I had. I'd landed in Charles de Gaulle Airport, got a lease car I had, and the idea was that I had to do some business in France and also Holland, and then pick Judy up on the next plane, and we'd go for a trip around France. But I'd planned a bit ambitiously, and by the time I got my car from the airport, I had planned to be in Metz the next night. Now, Metz is a fair way east of Paris. It would have been okay, except that somehow or other I had a few side trips on the way that looked interesting, and by the time I got towards there, it was getting quite dark. And I took the wrong road at some point and ended up in Verdun. Okay, both Metz is the capital now of, the administrative capital of Lorraine. Nancy was the duchy capital, but Metz is the sort of administrative capital of Lorraine, and Verdun is a very important place between, almost on the border of Alsace and Lorraine, and it is wall to wall. First World War One, French memorial. The whole place. Just couldn't. I stumble over them all the time in the gloom. I eventually got on the right road to get to Metz and got there about 11:30 at night, and they still kept the room for me amazingly. But just the same, I just relate the fact that Verdun is a very important place to the French, and were as far as memorials for they lost so many defending Verdun. Anyway, I didn't bring memorials of the World War I itself, but I just bought a couple of coins of the period. And there's more than one of the big casualties of World War I, which took a little bit of a while to actually finally get buried, was gold. Gold coinage. Okay, before World War I, gold was money. Money was gold. The exchange rate between the German mark and the French franc and the English pound. How much did the pound weigh? How much did the franc weigh in gold? And that was it. So simple. And of course, people just couldn't turn around and manufacture gold like we can print money today, and that was what gave its acceptance. It took a long time because after the war, both France and Germany, I mean, France had inflation, Germany had hyperinflation, as we all know, and I don't think there were too many German coins minted in gold after the First World War. Certainly in France, there are very few. But the Victoria sign, England, they just kept on going on minting it like it was going out of fashion. Anyway, I've got a gold coin, a 20 franc piece, almost a pound, of the period dated 1913. And I think I'll show what's the obverse officially, which is Marianne, the sort of spirit of France. This is not 22 carat gold, but 0.9. So that's like, what, 21 carat or something like that, 0.9 gold. And you can see it's slightly coppery because the alloy they use is coppery. But nobody paid attention to the value of any copper, and it was all about the gold. And it was almost a pound, so that makes a 20 franc, that makes a franc almost an English shilling at the time. So these coins are pretty much bullion. Certainly in poorer grades, this is quite a nice grade. The Coq d'Or, 20 francs, and so 1913. Now they minted some in 1914, the beginning. That was the end of the issue. No more minted right through the war, anything. Gold just couldn't have been used as currency during the war. It's just too scarce, too valuable. Okay, the other coin I've got here is a imperial sovereign, the George V, dated 1914, the beginning year of the war. And It's a Melbourne mint, so it was minted in Melbourne. There's a little M there underneath the bar on the below the St George and the Dragon, and quite a nice coin too. Once again, these are common in the sense that the poorer grades are only worth bullion. I should say they're worth bullion plus GST these days, of course, because they're a collectible. As I think I explained this last time, you've got to pay GST on them if you buy them from a GST registered dealer. Of course, if you sell them, you don't collect the GST back again. So from that point of view, they're not a good bullion investment. So there we are. Now, unlike France, which just didn't have any gold, Australia had plenty of gold. In fact, it was one of the powerhouses of the empire in 1914, and kept on minting gold right through the war, and right through to what, 1931, I think, was around about the last one. 1926 was the last one at the Sydney Mint. Melbourne, I presume, had run out of gold by then, and it was all coming from Kalgoorlie. Okay, so Perth Mint at this stage was most common, but Melbourne Mint's nice. And yes, it's just the death of gold. There was some resurrection in France between the wars, nothing much in Germany, and of course we know that's gold. I mean, nothing. The Second World War, nothing. At that stage, the treaty or the meeting at Bretton Woods outlawed gold effectively. People were not allowed to have gold. It was illegal to have it unless you had special dispensation to have a collection. Illegal to have it because they wanted people to get out of the habit of expecting gold money. And it sort of worked. If you have gold today, nobody will accept it as currency or anything like that. Nobody's used to doing it. Nobody's sure of the value of it anymore. But the question is it going to come back? If it did, it'd be worth about $10,000 US an ounce to make it sort of go round, and that's probably what it would have been if they'd kept on going. But because there's not a lot of demand for gold, as you say, except for jewellery, and I keep on reading investment pundits who say, "Oh, now sell all your shares, sell everything, get in gold." It wouldn't have worked in the last many years because gold this year has actually gone down in value in US dollars. So, but it's still worth having for its beauty, and apparently the same pundits tell me that they can't mint enough gold even these days for the jewellery demand and electrical conductors. With that little problem we just had then, had they been gold-plated connectors, it probably wouldn't have happened. Okay, fantastic electrical conductor, but yes, it remains to be seen whether gold will make a comeback or whether it will just be a curiosity of yesteryear. Who knows?
Following on from David's talk, in 1914, banknotes, as we understand them today, started. The British started the 10 shillings and £1 notes. They were known as the Bradbury notes because he was the Chancellor of the Exchequer and they came on the scene in 1914, late 1914, because the British didn't like the idea of all their troops lying dead on the battlefield with gold in their pockets. So they printed the notes, which could be redeemed for gold, and that's how it started. When the troops went to Gallipoli in 1915, when they were on the ships heading there, they were all issued with these Bradbury 10 shillings and £1 notes, overprinted in Turkish for the whatever values in piastres that it was. And so, they were prepared to win and to have these notes go into use in Turkey. But of course that didn't eventuate. But Australia followed very soon, because it was about 1914 or so that the first Australian government notes came out and the private banknotes stopped. The first Australian notes came out were called superscribed notes, and what the government did with it was an Act of Parliament or something saying that now all notes would be printed by the government, so the private banks could no longer use their own private issues. All those private issues by I think it was 15 banks, were collected and were all overprinted Government of Australia, and they had their number and what next, and the superscribed notes are worth a lot of money nowadays. And 40 years ago, 35 years ago, we had an A&S meeting down in Wentworth Avenue in Gemology House, and I can remember sitting down there, and the Newcastle hoard of superscribed notes had just been found, and they were passing them around and showing them. There was about 5 or different base notes that they were overprinted on, and you could buy them from whoever had them. I mean, I think they were like $20 each or so, but $20 was quite a bit of money, and I didn't buy any. But they're worth thousands nowadays.
You saw it.
I wish I had. And I was working at Qantas there. And a few years later, one of my workmates said, "Oh, I was digging in the garden, and we dug up this plastic bag with a few coins and this note in it, and his little daughter's been playing with the note ever since. And it was a Bank of New South Wales superscribed £1, and it was worth about $2,000 or so, So you say, God Almighty, stop Natalie from playing with that note, So I got the note, I photocopied it, I still got the photocopy, but that's all I got, just the photocopy. And I think Glenn and Lucy actually sold the note to John Pettit afterwards for $1,000 or something like that. But it was in the garden. Someone dug it up. They dug it up. but superscribed notes were great notes. Wish I'd collected them.
Yeah, well, that is the amazing thing. I mean, if you'd not wanted the notes, but you wanted to hoard gold, you would have done much poorly than had you just kept the banknotes at the time. Much rarer and much more desirable things. So
and those
very
John,
contrary thing.
Those John Bradbury
Not
notes
worth as much as paper.
Yeah, the first British notes, the John Bradbury 10 shilling notes were the red one, and the £1 note was the black one. And the Bradbury notes are still sought after today. It's the start of the modern sort of currency.
Well, there's a question there, David. I don't know when it happened, but I was sort of told that, like, when they have a war, that gold is the universal currency. But, like, just you talking about, like the First World War, 1913, 1914, and all the gold disappeared. But
well, it may be, but when it disappeared too, it might have been used, both the Allies and the Germans and so on, to buy armaments and buy things from other countries where the only thing they would accept is gold. But within their local people, they probably pulled all the gold out and wouldn't give them back. That's why they put the stamp on the paper. I promise to pay the bearer, but they hollow promise. Nobody ever did.
The gold all went to America and to Switzerland.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, I didn't think of that. Like what you're basically saying is correct, because what's the good of your enemy giving you their currency to buy armaments when you're fighting against them anyway?
Yeah.
The Americans did it during the second. In the early part of the second, the Americans were selling GMCs and Ford trucks to the Germans because they had production plants here. They didn't cease production. The Germans seized them. I think Coca-Cola brought back their recipe, but the Germans said, well, we still want fizzy drinks. The chemists at Coca-Cola in Germany had to come up with it, and that's where Fanta came from. The Americans are still getting royalties off that. But then when the Germans started capturing different countries and they showing up to the Swiss banks, and the Swiss banks are going, we can't take this, it's captured looted money and we can't take this. And I think one bank clerk said, well, all you're simply going to do is go back over the border, melt it and put your mark on it. And that's what they did with all the captured gold they had, was they just remelted it, marked it as Third Reich markings on it. And the Swiss banks were, yeah, we'll take that. We'll go pay your bills for you through the Swiss banks. That's how they got all their... I read a book on Nazi gold. I think it was just still got given away home somewhere in the office.
It was like World War II with the Operation Bernhardt £5, the German fake £5, when they, to test how good those £5 notes were, they actually took them to Switzerland, and the Swiss happily accepted those £5 notes I mean, the Germans were going to produce these English £5 notes to devalue the English currency, and that, you know, they had their Jewish prisoners produce them, and they were that good that it fooled the Swiss bankers.
The counterfeiter.
Yeah.
Was the movie.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Look, I could add some things to just kind of clarify some of the discussion going on here. Not only did gold support the British pound, but you have to understand that something of the region of about 80 to 85% of all international trade was done in pounds sterling. Okay? Everybody had, nations, the Germans, the French, the Dutch, they had their gold stores was all in Lombard Street in the Bank of England. Okay, that's the only thing that made their paper worthwhile. Now, in the Franco-Prussian War, and this is indicated by Walter Bagehot, who was for many years the editor of The Economist. It was really first-class magazine. Bagehot tells us that in 1870 the Germans actually made a request to the Bank of England, can we get our money? We want some of our gold, we want our gold back. But that gold underpinned sterling around the world, and the British government asked the Germans, please find another solution, because it would sort of render a crisis for the whole global economy if the gold came out of the Bank of England, because the British pound depended upon it. Now, if you look at the sort of start of the First World War, Germans made a request, it appears, to get their gold back out of the Bank of England in 1914.
Yep.
And that was done on Friday. There was the weekend. Monday was the bank holiday. The British cabinet was sweating over what to do about this.
Extra holiday.
They extended the bank holiday, and it went to Tuesday, and then they extended it again to Wednesday, and on the Thursday the British declared war. Okay? And if you really chase it all, because they never gave the Germans back their gold. And if you look at the reparations, you'll find that in fact the first part of the reparations payment is that the gold that was never given back was then incorporated as first part of the reparations payment. So, as regards the role of the gold and the need for gold, the Americans wanted gold, and the Americans were absolutely crucial in the delivery of goods for the conduct of the First World War. And it's only towards the end of the war when the Germans went down, because it became clear that at the conclusion of the First World War, the Americans, having the bulk of the gold, the American dollar would suddenly become the international currency, because paper is only as good as what backs it. At the end of the day, and there's no point kidding yourself about it, when a crunch comes, nobody takes paper without the security, convincing security behind it. And in war, nothing convinces. So, the gold, it departed out of Europe because it actually was used through the Bank of England, and transfers were made to Americans by the Germans as well, it seems. But all the money, all the gold, or very large amounts of it, went to America.
Yeah.
And that's why after the First World War, in the 1920s, that sort of suddenly the global international currency for international transactions was the American dollar. You'll see around that time already the American Fed was forming. I think 1913 or something it started, but that Fed suddenly came into play. The British banking people, you find it's just in the books, even books are sort of for undergraduates. The British were saying that the Americans, we know their history with paper, which was crazy, and it's sort of the Americans do not have enough sort of wise experience in the industry, enough sense of the issues at stake, and they won't be able to look after it. And this arguably is one of the ways in which eventually the 929 thing came about. Americans suddenly had oodles of it and made more paper than would have been wise and fueled sort of property speculation.
Anyway, they went off the gold standard anyway, didn't they?
Eh?
I said, went off the gold standard.
They had difficulties with the gold, but it's Roosevelt in 33, he closed the gold down and everybody had to hand their gold in and they got gold certificates.
Yeah.
All right? It's only going off the gold standard in 68 when it was eventually worked out that the Americans, central banks around the world were holding American dollars which were presumed to be as good as gold. The Americans had the gold backing, but in 68 it became clear that they actually didn't, that they'd been just printing it. And that's why eventually in 71 devaluation was forced on the American dollar by the...
It's like today, all currency is
banks.
backed by nothing, really.
Money was
Certainly not
power.
enough to go around.
And if you can make your paper stick, you can print power for yourself. That's actually what's going on.
These days it's not even paper, it's just digital codes in a computer, that's it. That's what money is.
All right, let's move on. Tony, did you say you brought some stuff?
Yeah, do you want to see some badges?
Yeah, well, it's only 9:20.
I didn't bring all of them. I only brought some.
Just show us one page.
One
One
page.
page?
Right.
One page.
Put it
You can look out of it.
You can photograph
There's
them?
a group
Yeah.
in
Pete,
their
you want
actual...
a photograph? The 2 coins?
So this badge is what is? These are short badges.
I brought the Bible as well. Australia's. Righto, so where do we start? Well, we'll start with the groups. Now, the way, as you know, I keep my badges in these sheets. And there's a lot of them First World War, of course, basically at the top, and there are others with the sort of Second World War and likes underneath. But there was no way I was going to start taking all these things out and putting them in, then go and putting them all back. So I thought it was better I'd just bring them in like this, and you can just see a lot of them as they are. You'll see most of them, probably First World ones, are all along there.
Oh, Empire Day.
Empire Day. Empire Day. Empire Day.
Some of them there, if they haven't got dates on it, I know they are that period, First World War. Or that period of time anyway.
That's a bit later, E2R.
Yeah.
It's, that looks like it's, I know that looks like. Could be on there.
You know, a lot of these badges in Australia, we had a lot of affinity with France. You know, so many badges produced here, Red Cross and Victory ones and
Repatriation Day.
yeah, all those sorts of things, and a lot of badges that Australia produced, and commemorating the French, because there was a close affiliation, as we all know, Britain and all the rest of it, and. Mind you, that's the Second World War anyway, but it was the same sort of thing. Flanders and what's the other one I'm thinking of? So, as you can see, there's quite a lot of First World War badges of that sort of size.
46.
And you can see by the design and the like, plenty of different little poses and flags and motifs and colour. And for me, that the colour and so forth and the design of the thing, I think is one of the most attractive things about badges. And of course the other thing about them, of course, is trying to get quality because it's basically steel or tin or whatever. It's subject to the potential of being attacked by whatever pollutants around, and you notice there's some there, if it's a bit of rust here and there, but the only reason why they're there is because I can't find one that has got any rust on it.
It's a fabulous collection.
It's lovely, yeah.
And it's sort of one of those sort of things.
When do you think you first started to collect these?
When I was this high, probably.
Yeah.
Yes,
There's a Verdun one, David.
when you're talking about Verdun, I've got a couple of those. That's one of them. Probably at school. Now, when I was at school, like some of us here were, we collected everything.
Yeah.
Stamps and badges and bottle tops and marbles, and it went on, and cigarette cards, and went on and on and on. And we used to take them to school, and cigarette cards would be in at this particular stage. Then they all got put away, and next thing you know, we were starting some stamps. And then there was badges. And guys used to have badges inside their coats, and some used to have hats with all the badges on them and so forth. And some of them that I've got in the collection here now, I had when I was in primary school. So there was a lull. I think it's called females when I was a teenager, and things came to a bit of a grinding halt. And probably all been through that. And I probably started in this phase probably at the end of the 19th century, maybe, so, 95 or 6 or something like that. And I sort of continued on from there, basically, and gave up some of the areas I was collecting in numismatic areas like British coins and the like, because I found a lot of interest in the badges, because there's so much history in it, and there's so much colour, and it didn't cost you an arm and a leg. Mind you, I'll show you some tonight, but it probably did cost you a bit of an arm and a leg, but, you know. These are now you get into some of the Red Cross areas. And you might find there's some French ones, there's some British ones. I'm talking about Australian badges, but they're being produced here for other countries. There's some Italian ones there I can see just taken up. There's the British.
There's a lot of them, yeah.
There's French ones. Made in Australia.
Oh, what's it? Somebody's not familiar.
The manufacturers of these are basically named Fitzpatrick's, I think it is, or Patrick's, I think or whether they call it.
Patrick's, yeah.
I think it's Patrick's. Also, there are a couple of others of manufacturers as well in South Australia, in particular.
That was an interesting one with a number on it, Tony. 11803. They numbered each one. Boy.
There's actually quite, I don't know about necessarily Red Cross, but there are quite a number of different badges that come out with numbers on them. I'm not exactly sure why, unless they ever use a lot of ones.
That one's got a number on it.
Got a number on it too. It seems to be some of them when there's been fairs, on or something like that, or a big get-together. Some of those seem to have numbers on them.
That's more recent one, yeah.
some of these badges we're looking at here now, not so much these ones, as you can see, they're a bit more common. But the other ones, I see, mate, I've only just got one, and I probably haven't seen any others. They're sort of, they come out and they were produced, but not in great quantities, and some of them very sort of in local little areas where they've been produced for towns. They're very sort of patriotic up in the Hunter area around Newcastle, and that there's a lot of badges produced just for there. And of course it's very nice to get the ones that are produced for the little country towns, not so much with the Red Cross, but other badges, because they're just made for the local towns. And of course most of the badges stay in a local town, or they get lost in the local town. Very hard to pick them up in cities, but it does happen.
Great.
There's a couple there, the larger, repatriation. A lot of these ones were produced South Australia, very patriotic state.
Trying to raise money for
they-
repatriation?
Did they?
Is that what these badges were for?
I think there's a good chance that there was a bit of that, yes. That one there's a quite rare,
Very much. Wagadius.
quite rare.
Very much.
These ones, your colour patches, you can see these, they've probably been worn considerably by the soldiers and the like, and that's why it's very, very hard to pick up any of those that don't have the odd blemish on them. I get a lot of them and I just throw them away, get them out of circulation because they're hardly worthwhile keeping. So those ones are there. There's sometimes as good a quality as I can get. Now there's some quite interesting ones here. There's a bit of Second World War stuff in here, but that's First World War. You can see the flags there.
Yeah, Japan was with us. Yes.
He was second, unfortunately.
He's a Tasmanian, isn't he?
That was Errol Flynn.
No, it was also Monty.
That's Monty, yeah. That's him.
Montgomery was a Taswegian, yeah.
Was he born there, or did your father come over?
Was it Tasmania?
Father was a minister.
I thought he was lock, stock and barrel UK, wasn't he?
No.
What's the affiliation he had with Australia?
Who? Montgomery?
Yeah.
Montgomery's
Yeah, he's
father
Australian.
was a Church of England minister,
Oh, okay.
and he was sent down from England to run a parish down there, and Monty grew up down there for a bit before going back and doing his going to Sandhurst and all that sort of stuff.
But he was born in Australia, was he?
I can't remember if he was born here or
I must have
born
been.
in
I
England,
haven't picked that one up, but
Yeah.
there you go.
came down when he was quite. I got a book at home about Montgomery and Rommel, and they compared them off, like with their military service and when they were injured and all that sort of stuff, and the way they then went up through the ranks to becoming what they were. And they believe at one time, in one battle, they may have actually faced off each other in the First World War. But they would have been lieutenants or something, some lower ranks.
Yeah, yeah. They certainly faced off in the Second World War, that's for sure.
They were both pretty good shots. So they were not so much snipers, but they were
Oh, Prince of Wales.
Well, they're very good at their jobs too, both of them. That, what you see there is possibly a badge that's been produced by an individual, or been made for an individual, whether it's for a wife or a daughter or whatever. But when you get some of those badges, they're like nearly one-offs, or they might have just made a dozen of them just for family members. And so when you pick them up, they could be quite scarce, you know.
Yeah, I got one from Botany with an individual one like that.
Yeah, yes.
They've got one up here, that looks, I think it's got Tom Bradman on one. Yes. And that's what it looks.
Now we get into some of the enamel ones. Now these are, you can see I can That's a fake Ballarat 17. Obviously, there's a Brighton Festival. Quite a lot of badges like this, Red Cross and others. They've done it sort of at carnivals and things like that. Now, it's probably a method of raising money, of course. You read such and Stokes and Melbourne one, yep.
We all know about, I guess, the famous Australian nurse, Vivian Bullwinkle, who was on one of the last ships out of Singapore in the Second World War, had the Red Cross on it. Naturally, the Japanese bombed it and sunk it. A few of the nurses, including Vivian and some of the soldiers who were on board, got to a beach.
Yeah.
The Japanese separated the soldiers from the nurses, marched them around the corner, shot them, and told the nurses, walk back into the sea. And they were shot. Vivian was, I assume some of you know this story, Vivian was shot, fell over but survived, and she spent the rest of the war in a prisoner of war camp. And after the war, her uniform with a red blood stain on it was donated to the museum in Canberra. She was in the 1970s in Vietnam. She was the only nurse who went to Vietnam near the end of the war to evacuate some children who were, I assume were orphans, back to Australia. She was the only nurse on the flight who had been in a war situation. And it must have been terrified for the younger nurses to be in that situation. And I've seen photographs of the soldiers guarding children, the babies, in cardboard boxes. The children were crying, and the soldiers, the Australian soldiers,
There's an interesting one.
what the hell are we doing here? But she helped organise that flight from Vietnam of those children.
I thought she died before.
She had a long-time soldier boyfriend, but it wasn't until 20 years later that she decided she would marry him.
He wasn't that slow to propose, was he?
He was a patient man.
Some of these badges, as you can see, come up here, and you've seen the Irish one there. Some of the ones were Australians actually over there, joined the particular British divisions and the like, and that's why the badges sort of come back here. You see,
That was an Australian penny. I did that a lot of times.
yeah. Now that is rare.
Well, it would be,
Yes.
yeah, I know even the medal is worth lots, and the canteen taken from it.
That also is quite rare.
What's the base of that one?
All
The
these-
rejected volunteers, what was
Well, people, like my father, he signed up to go in the Navy beginning of the war, and they took all the particulars and so forth, and then they basically sent him back a letter to say he is not going to be accepted, and the chances of him coming up and being thought of for active service, and thank you very much, because he was in a protected industry. He was a draftsman working for Babcock and Woolcock, and of course he was drawing up boilers to put in our ships to go and fight the Germans. So they weren't going to stick him over there with a rifle. They wanted to design the boilers to knock out all their ships. So he couldn't go. I think that's what that is like. They have these that were rejected for those sorts of reasons, or medical, medical reasons.
So theoretically, if they wore one of those, they wouldn't get the white feather.
Yeah, more than likely. Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Now some of these other ones here are getting a bit. These are most interesting. These are called the War Workers Badge, right? Now, they're granted to war workers who are authorised for work towards the war effort overseas and are awarded after armistice in 1919 to identify the worker as having assisted the war effort in a civilian capacity. Now, as you can see, what's on the navvies and labourers, you see. The first one there, a bronze, there's probably about 2,500 probably produced. They have a value of $250. I've got a couple of them. The silver one is rare, and they reckon there's 1,000. Maybe a bit uppish on what you'd actually get, but that's the sort of money. Now the silver one, you sort of think of it, they don't even know the number it was produced. They were produced probably for people up in the ranks, you know, sort of and the like. And you sort of wonder why they only had a small production of them. It's got a number of 819. Well, he might have been a specific person, and he had a number, or whatever it may have been, in the whatever it was he was in or involved in, and he may have had that number put on the thing because that it was like he's a member of the ANS, you see, and he's 819. But so
his copper one was, his bronze ones was that number, so they put the same number on the silver one.
Well, I think the actual ones there that have got the numbers on them, I think they were just punched out with numbers and they were just given to individuals, unless maybe an individual wanted a specific number. I don't know. It's just that the numbers on the silver one are sort of done for, that reason. Possibly the guy was a member of whatever it was, or it was his number in his platoon or whatever, And so that's it. Not that he was in a platoon, but he was working there in the workshops and the like. So quite very scarce, that silver one. So that's the sort of thing that you get in this book. It's highly illustrated, lots of information. It goes right through from 1772. They've got the medals and the like going right through to whatever it goes up to today. So that's those two.
Wow.
Now, here's some interesting ones here. Now these...
John, that clock's still on, not on daylight saving.
Yeah,
it's 9:45.
Yeah. So
You've been talking for a long time, Frank.
Well, we want to whip through these quick or what?
I have to go at 10.
time to go, I think.
Do you think it's time to go? A lot of these badges here are sweetheart badges. Sweetheart badges are the serviceman, whatever he's in with the Navy and so forth, decides he wants to he's got a sweetheart and he might have several of them overseas. He goes, and it could also be his wife too, he goes and gets these things specially made, and that's why they're called sweetheart badges. And a lot of them, of course, have their colour patches, they're enamelled, and they can pull reasonable money as well, particularly if they're in condition. And as you can see, they're beautifully done. Not necessarily done by government organisers, it can be done by jewellers. Jewellers have the ability to produce some of these things and get them enamelled, and that's how it is. And some of them, you see that WFW. Well, that's probably the manufacturer, or it could have been the jeweller, and he's produced those ones.
They're not in gold.
Ones that got NM on them, there's no manufacturer's name on the back. So on the top of the card is what's on the face, what's on the bottom of the card is on the reverse.
So the sweetheart badges, would they have only done them in active service or after the active service?
They could have done them after the active service. I mean, after all, if he was in a platoon or whatever it was, and he's got the wherewithal to sort of prove that he's got it, they could have manufactured it, as far as I know.
In wartime, would they have jewellers that would be making things?
Well, I suppose when they go to if they're fighting the Australians over there in Europe and the like, and when they go off and R&R and so forth, then they can go, I suppose, into England and get jewellers to do it there. And of course, he's have all his equipment and so forth on, no doubt, his colour patches and so forth, and tell them what to do. And the guy's not going to turn anybody away. It's a few bob for him, isn't it? So I think it's really a bit open there, but I wouldn't mind betting a lot of them are done during the war, sweetheart badges, and they send them to their sweetheart, whether it's the wife or the sort of girl, and so forth. So I think it's a bit open and could be done in many shapes and forms. You know. I wanted to show you this one here. It's it was there. That's it, on the other side of the fence. It's upside down, eh?
Upside down.
It's up. Have I put it in upside down? How stupid. That was just to show you
To make sure we're
Prussian Red Cross.
That's a Prussian Red Cross.
Just to make sure we weren't all asleep.
Yeah. Yeah, a Prussian Red Cross, World War One. Once again, a few bob. That's a very nice little Red Cross badge. That a number of people have seen that and said, "Where the deuce did you get that from?" I said, "I don't know, but I've got it." And you're selling it? No. It's there's not too many of them around, obviously. Well, there's red triangles. A lot of people sort of talk about the red triangle and the like. And so when I've got an AIF on it, I've put red triangle because as you go along a little bit further, the other way, well, actually the YMCA, well, they have YMCA on it, so I've decided I'll put YMCA on that one, and I've kept the sort of red triangle going on the other ones, where it's just, So, and they produce quite a few different types, even by the same manufacturer like Miller's there. Slightly different colours, slightly different things, and that's the varieties. You've still got yours there, haven't you, eh?
Better believe it.
Good lad. That's a light horse, there's too many of those.
Well, give the story.
What, with what you've got?
Of the A medal.
Oh, well, it's basically there. That's the A medal that was for those that fought at Gallipoli.
Oh, no.
And I basically put there a patch of Gallipoli, this is the veterans. And of course, what we're talking about here is Morrison's got one with the actual sort of colour patch. It's pinned onto a colour patch, which I managed to dig up for you, didn't I, at some stage of the game, yeah. That's a light horse, nice one to have. A lot of them are so small they got lost and so forth, so to sort of grab one out that's not bent and all the rest of it is quite nice. Comforts, funds. I've been reading a couple of war stories at the moment over there of course in Europe, and I've just realised how important the Australian Comforts funds were with the amount of food and stuff they sent over to our troops, and the like, is huge, and it was huge, and I didn't realise that they were so involved and sent so much over there to our fighting forces.
They also produced games, dominoes, they produced checkers, and the rarest one I've seen are the chess sets by the Australian Comfort Funds.
Ah. Interesting. Yeah. Oh, that's a victory. I think that's Father's First World War. Yeah, there's quite a few victory ones. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's about sort of.
Oh, that's it.
Should put the bloody water on.
All right, well, thanks for that, Tony. Right.
Well, I didn't bring any WW1. The only one I brought in was my very last PNC that I have on my subscription, which is now gone,
It's old.
and it was for
It's gotta be 28,
Winks. And it's a little bit outdated because Winks has now won 28 races. So, but this was the one that they put out, a couple of months ago. And they've only just actually produced it, so it's only come out recently.
Oh, 'cause there was another one that another horse they issued PNC for who won a lot of races too.
Yeah.
Recently, yeah.
Yep. So that's there, the mare beyond compare.
All right, well, I'll just finish up by showing you a couple of pieces of my World War One. That's the first of the series. This one here. That's the 2015 version of what Pat showed. And basically, in this pack, it was all about the
Anzacs, huh?
the Anzac and the soldiers of Anzac. So again, as I was saying to you before, they put out 2 of these card series, and it was mainly because they did intend on having a $1, a coloured $1 coin, and they designed this thing to have that $1 coin in there, but this particular card didn't have the cutouts. And to get, when you got the $1 coin, you got the second version of that card that allowed you to put the $1 coin, which was still in the card, in these cards, into that position there. And that sort of created a bit of an uproar because a lot of people went out and bought these things, and then they found that if they wanted the one with the dollar coin, they had to get an entirely different book. So that's what ended up happening.
I got those once, but I didn't even know about the dollar coin.
Yeah.
So, missed out totally on that one.
Yeah, but that's the first one in the series, and I did read somewhere that they're going to produce one for next month for the armistice. So
So the first one was 15, so it's 15, 16, 17.
and
So
then they didn't do Anzac 18 because they figured they'll do it Armistice 18. I think that's the way they've decided to do it. Yeah, so that's the whole series then.
So they didn't do a 14 because Gallipoli was 15, I guess. Anzac came into...
Yeah, so it was all about Anzacs. The other piece that I've got is it's a commemorative medal for the First World War from Belgium. It's quite a nice little piece, so we can have a look at that. But it is, it's not a military medal as such for the Belgians that served in the war. It was a commemorative medal. So it's in Belgium. As you can see, it sort of indicates 1914 to 1918, and a commemorative. It's a commemorative medal. So that's all that I have. Well, thank you very much for everybody's contribution tonight. It was quite informative, and well, gee, look at the amount of stuff that we've got.
Yeah, far more than I thought we were going to get.
But that was quite enjoyable. It is a little bit premature because it's a month early, but hey, I think it's well worth the effort, and seeing all the different varieties that I for one didn't realise there were so many different of those
different nations putting in
victory medals. So as far as I was concerned, as soon as I saw that ribbon, it was the same one, but obviously not. So it's good to see those sort of things, because if you do start getting involved in military medals, well then you now have to collect so many more. Yeah, like I went out at one stage and collected UN medals. And all of a sudden there was a UN medal for every different conflict. And I thought, well, about 10 or 12.
In the Americans sometimes have the UN plus their own to go with it.
You can see what happens. But no, doing a theme for the night, I think that works quite well, because it shows you exactly what is out there, so that you can appreciate more about what you're collecting. So thank you all for coming. Don't forget, next month we're at Nobles, so 7:30. But
yeah, no, I remember. I know why you did that. When you sorted that out.